evening and welcome to UPfront. Today, we actually are putting a spotlight on one person who's been former environment minister and also currently subsidiary legislation committee chair, the Honorable Boko Central MP. Sometimes very controversial, but most part a very wonderful gentleman. Welcome, Honorable Mahama Yariga, to UPfront.
Thank you.
I hope you are doing well.
I didn't see myself as a controversial.
Oh, really? Not long ago, the entire Parliament of the Republic of Ghana was hanging on your own testimony.
Well, sometimes it happens. Sometimes those incidents are unavoidable. And when you go through them, then you appreciate what it means to be part of the management of the public affairs.
You taught many something that probably is interesting. If you don't want to really apologize, you say, if you say I should apologize, I would apologize. But I mean, there's an essential question behind all of their engagement. There's a question about people asking the role of Parliament. Do you think it's been played well?
Well, I mean, we are doing our best within the constraints. Parliament of Ghana, if you compare us with many other parliaments in the sub-region, and in fact on the continent, you will find out that our peers hold us in very high esteem. I just came from Lomé last night where we were having a sitting of the ECOWAS Parliament.
Okay.
And I can assure you that at the ECOWAS Parliament, countries like Ghana and to quite an extent Nigeria are held very high in the sub-region in terms of the quality of the parliaments of these two countries. And it extends to the entire continent. So Parliament is doing as much as the Constitution permits us to do. I believe that we could do better. We could do better if better resourced. That is to say, if we had more research support, if we had more technical support. Many parliamentarians want to introduce private members' bills into Parliament, but that takes a lot of work to draft one, and paying consultants to draft some, and people really in the House can't afford to pay. So things like that. People really want to make, high quality statements on the floor of the House. But, high quality statements also have to be backed by very good research. And most MPs don't have the resources to do empirical research. Nigeria has a legislative institute that is paid by the federal government, and all they do is respond to the needs of parliamentarians who need private members' bills drafted, motions drafted, and even statements on very critical matters that require a lot of research. Sometimes the debate is on economics. I'm a lawyer, I'm not an economist. And so you will need an economist to do serious research for you. And to be able to do very serious research, you are talking about somebody with a master's degree or even a PhD to be able to do high quality work for you. There's an initiative in Parliament to provide MPs with research assistants, people with a master's degree. If that starts, we'll see the quality of the work that they can back up members of Parliament with. So we want to. I will also say that if you have observed us, at least in the last 8 months in the House, there's been some issues regarding the way in which the leadership of the House has managed debates in the House. And
you're in the minority, you've not been very excited by that.
Yes, and so that is also the issue. Our leader, Honorable Haruna Idrisu, has raised it the last time, we had to walk out because we felt that we're not being given the opportunity to debate the issues.
You cannot even have your say.
Yes, we believe that given the numbers of the parliamentarians on the other side for the NPP, they will win any vote any day, unless really it's a very bad issue and people are voting according to their conscience and they're not going to be whipped. But if it is going to be voting along party lines, and if the whip system is going to be used, we believe they will win any debate. But at least we hope that we'll be given the opportunity to have our say,
Okay.
and to give the country the opportunity to weigh the value in the arguments on both sides and to see who probably is pointing in the right direction. That's the whole essence of Parliament, really. And I think that in that regard, there's been some deficit, and we'll keep complaining, and we hope that the leadership of the House will
Many of
deal
your
with
colleagues
those issues.
reject the title, but I keep hearing civil society insistently giving it to you that Parliament is virtually a rubber stamp.
Well, I think
De
that
facto rubber stamp, as in what happens at the end of the day, it looks like it will go the same way.
it depends on the workings of Parliament. I think what has happened is that many of the institutions that bring issues to Parliament have learned to consult Parliament even before they bring the issues to Parliament.
Okay.
So at the stage when somebody is asked to draft a bill for a ministry, when they are doing the consultation, sometimes they even include the ministry, the parliamentarians in the consultation process. So sometimes by the time the bill comes, it sometimes reflects the views of the parliamentarians.
Okay.
In which case, really, they don't have much to change in the policy or in the drafting of the legislation. Take, for instance, the committee that I share, Subsidiary Legislation Committee. The way that subsidiary legislation works is that an act of Parliament vests a minister with the power to make regulations, to implement a policy or a program that is initiated in a legislation. The rule is that when you bring the legislative instrument LI to Parliament, we either accept it wholly or we reject it wholly. We can't amend it.
Okay.
We cannot amend your legislative instrument.
I see.
We have to reject the whole thing or we accept the whole thing.
As in it lies in Parliament, you watch it,
Yes.
and it matures within a certain
Yes.
number of days.
So, and this was in the Constitution. And in the workings, we realized that this is not really the best. We should have the opportunity to change it. So what ministers have resorted to doing is that they have their draft. Then they bring their draft to us as a committee.
Okay.
It is called pre-laying. And we will sit with the ministers and the stakeholders and review the legislative instrument so that the changes that we would have effected if you had brought it to the floor of the House, we will review it and tell you, change this, add that, amend it this way. We don't agree with this policy. We think that it should change at this stage. And so when we have engaged the sector minister and the stakeholders, we've agreed on the way that the LI should come out. Then they go back to the Attorney General's office and now finalize it in a way that captures the sentiments and views of the parliamentarians. Then they bring it back and lay it. So such a thing, when they lay it, you will see that Parliament hasn't changed anything. And a bystander will say, these people just rubber stamped this legislative instrument. But they have no idea how much work went into reviewing it with the same parliamentarians prior to the bill, the LI coming to Parliament. So those are the issues. The same with even the budget that we discussed. The budget will go to Cabinet, Cabinet will discuss it. The ministries will be engaged, pre-budget, processes that involve the ministries. And each committee of Parliament is working with their sector ministry. So in the engagement process, sometimes you are really involved. And so when it is finally put together as a composite budget and brought to the House, very often you debate the policy, but the figures you can't change it because really, right from the beginning, you were given the ceilings by the finance minister, you lobbied and he couldn't change it or he didn't want to change it, and finally it came out that way. That's the issue. Last week, I was actually involved in a discussion, similar discussion with our colleagues in Nigeria. And here, you can reduce the allocations, but you can't increase the allocations. There in Nigeria, they can increase, they can reduce, and so it's made their parliament a little more effective, in terms of the debates. Because the excitement is getting it increased, not reduced. Whoever wants to reduce the budget of a sector that you belong to as a member of Parliament, your committee that oversees a certain sector, how would you ever agree that your budget should be reduced. So there's no excitement in reducing a budget. It hardly will ever happen that each side will agree that their budget should be reduced. The excitement is in making a case for your sector to be increased. And in our constitution, you know, it's only the president and his finance minister who can make those changes.
That's interesting.
And that is where we have the problem.
All right. So, I mean, why haven't you proposed a change of some of these rules?
Many of these provisions are entrenched provisions of our constitution, many of them. And if you want to amend it, there has to be a referendum.
Yeah.
And the constitutional review process that began some time ago, if you look at it, you will see that in a number of cases, there's been some recommendations for changes to be effected to the constitution to provide more leverage in these areas.
Okay.
Otherwise, I think that our parliament can be more effective if we allow even the deliberation, because parliament, the strength of parliament, it's in the openness of the deliberations and the intensity of, the quality of the debates that take place. And if we just allow that to happen, you will find out that many ideas will come from different angles that the executive can take on board when they are designing policy or when they are implementing policy. So, in all, I would say that, yes, there are still some challenges, there are still some deficits, but comparatively, our parliament is a good parliament.
Does the challenges include corruption?
I hope you are not tempting me and dragging me back into...
Yes, I'm not compelling you to be dragged before any committee. into an area that I, of all people, should be avoiding with the best of tactics and skills. I get your point, but I'm just asking the question that many have actually wondered. In fact, many out there have listed the parliament as very corrupt. They do not trust that the MPs will do their work without, because we've seen what happened with the NLA, we've seen what happened with, of course, they even said that they were able to pay some parliamentarians 150,000, and some of the other issues that have come up before in times past. So, for you, a member of the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, is the Parliament you are part of corrupt?
Well, I think that the struggle against corruption in our country needs to be fought very vociferously, very hard, with all the commitment. And generally, the perception out there is that politicians are corrupt, public servants are corrupt, judiciary is corrupt, parliament is corrupt, the security agencies are corrupt. That is the general perception of the Ghanaian. And it is hard for anyone to convince them otherwise. Let me show you how it happens. One, in our elections, we spend so much money campaigning, and these monies go to ordinary people who are voting. They see the money, the way you are spending it. Sometimes they partake in the benefits, but don't be deceived. Behind their, they are asking themselves, where did you get this money to be given me?
They're reviewing your financial status.
Because they knew you before you came to Parliament. They knew you before you declared that you will be running for office. And they knew your financial situation. And all of a sudden, you have largesse to be distributing. Where is this coming from? And they are not stupid. They're asking themselves, and after you've won, how are you going to pay and defray the cost? And so, right from the beginning, even from your campaign, the conduct of politicians is sending out signals to the voter that you're going to go to the office and you're going to try as much as possible to recoup your investments, in quotes, and it is their money that you're going to take. So when you talk about corruption, you talk about fighting it, it's not even here that you come and start fighting it. You have to fight it from the very moment when people are filing their nominations. You fight it at the time when people are engaged in campaigns.
Wow.
That is where the monitoring should take place. Indeed, I keep telling people that one of the things that if we really want to stop this thing and stop it well, then we may probably need to even change our constitutional arrangement. The entire presidential system makes it very, very difficult for candidates to go it without serious financial contributions from all sorts of groups. And people don't give money free of charge.
Oh, okay.
If you take even the US, let's talk about campaign financing issues. You find out that campaign financing issues are not very prominent in the UK.
Yeah.
If you have been listening carefully.
It's true.
In the US, they're
the
talking
big
about
lobbyists
campaign,
are not there.
they are talking seriously about campaign financing issues in the US, but they're not talking so much about campaign financing issues in the UK. Why? Because it's a parliamentary system. So even the Prime Minister is dealing with just a small constituency. And if he wins his constituency, where he doesn't need to spend so much money, and you win in your constituency where you don't need to spend so much money, and he wins in his constituency where he doesn't need to spend so much money, then you come to Parliament, and the party with the largest majority will select a Prime Minister, form a government. If they come form a government, they build a coalition and then form a government. And so spending on elections and getting into office is, in my opinion, far less and becomes less of a political issue than when you say one person must win 50% of the votes plus one across the country.
So the parliamentary system actually...
The parliamentary system lends itself less to corrupting influences in the area of election financing relative to the presidential system, where the president has to find money to go around the country and where he has to win everywhere, 50% plus one, and to show that he is a national leader, he has to make sure that across board he has a strong showing in every community, and it requires resources for him to mobilize and move around. And so in the process, he has to be funded. And we haven't yet developed strong systems for monitoring the presidential aspirants and the candidates, how they are getting the money and what they are spending it on, and how they are accounting for what they are spending.
Political parties are supposed to submit their accounts to the Electoral Commission. They are supposed to do so, after elections, 6 months now, and every year, their financial statement. This hardly happens. At last check, none of the political parties have even done so. But the EC has not cracked the whip on any institution or so. It looks like institutionally, we are not made to fight corruption.
I don't think so. I think that it's up to us to decide, because some of the laws are there. You just pointed out some laws that say each party should show how much.
Yeah.
But then there are institutions on the ground that should really figure out whether indeed what you have filed as your finances is what you actually spend on the ground, and should monitor and report. These are the mechanisms that we need to strengthen. These are the mechanisms we need to strengthen. And if we're able to do that, and we're able to check the financing of elections, we will be able to take out, I believe, 50% of the pressure that fuels corruption in public office at all levels, be it the legislature or the executives.
Will public financing be a solution?
It's a mechanism that you use. It's the mechanisms that you use. If the mechanisms are effective, how do you finance? How much money do you give to candidates? How do you check how much money they are putting on their own, and where is the source of that money? And the person given the money, what is their motivation? And is the person getting something in return? These are real issues that we need to deal with.
It's interesting. Currently, and of course, the previous government was on so many occasions perceived more, or probably many have said that one of the reasons why the Mahama administration lost elections was because of corruption. I have heard you even say that before, that that's the perception held by many in this country. The concept of having to fight corruption, this government said it wants to put together a special prosecutor, it would want to strengthen the Attorney General's department. Do you think the government is on course to achieving its aim in the area of fight against corruption? Let
me just say that there's a perception, and then there's the reality. And indeed, if you have monitored our campaign, and if after the elections you've taken time to conduct a study, you will see that one of the issues has been a very successful effort by the NPP, then in opposition, to present the then NDC government as being corrupt. A very successful effort. I mean, using effective communication strategies. That was what they succeeded in doing. True or false, I think that it's yet, the jury will be out soon, you know, after 4 years. We'll see what
Is this some of your colleagues are lined up for prosecution?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I saw an article in a paper mentioning me as being lined up for prosecution because as Minister for Agriculture, I'm alleged to have stolen tractors. I was never Minister for Agriculture.
I was wondering what time you were Minister for Agriculture.
I was never Minister for Agriculture, and I never stole tractors.
Okay, I've not seen your name on the list yet.
Yeah, they were selling tractors for communities, and I also procured a set and established it as a farmer service center in my constituency. Even this year, the tractor services are still there, running and providing services to people in my constituency. It took me more than 5 years to be able to even pay for the tractors and all that. So that is it. But the point that I'm making is this. There was that perception. And at the end of the day, when I talk about corruption also, I think that we need to understand corruption at different levels. You talk about there was a procurement of $60 million, $70 million, and there's a perception that the value doesn't reflect really what we're getting, and there's the the imputation that there must have been some corrupt transaction and etc.
Now,
there is that level, but for me, what is really very, very important is what happens to a young person when he's arrested and sent to the police station. How the police deal with that person. When it's time for admissions into schools.
Okay.
When parents go for admissions, are the children given the admissions on the basis of merit, or do they have to pay bribes and provide tips before their children
That's
get
low-level
admissions?
corruption.
Yes,
it doesn't rise up to the level of the big-time, big-money corruption. That's the big politicians are the ones involved in.
Listen.
I mean, the people can live with low-level corruption, but rarely they can't tolerate the one at the highest end.
No, we cannot tolerate it at all levels. We cannot tolerate it at all levels. And if you tolerate it at the lower levels and it goes into popular culture, that it is okay for any public officer to receive incentives before carrying out their responsibilities. If at the level of the secondary school, he's taking 10,000, then if that's the mentality at the grassroots level, at the lower levels, then they will live with the idea that at the level of the minister, he's taking a $20,000.
I get your point.
I hope you understand my point.
I get you.
So I'm saying that when I talk about corruption, I want us to look at it, the entire system, our educational institutions, where we train the next generation of leaders, where they receive their first, exposures in terms of governance and politics and etc. Can we clean it up? At the hospitals, where people on a daily basis interact with the state. When we say the state, for many of the ordinary people, they may never meet Mahama Ayariga when he's a minister of state. But they meet the town and country planning officer on a daily basis because they want to build a house.
Okay.
They go to hospital every day and they meet the medical directors there because they are sick and they've come. They go to, for them, these institutions are the face of the state at their level. And if it is cleaned up, then they will be able to understand you and galvanize themselves and work with you to fight grand corruption. So for me, when we talk about corruption, we must fight it holistically. So one, let me just get back to your original question.
Yeah.
There is the perception that our institutions, legislature, executive, judiciary, the civil service, public service, indeed even the private sector, there's a perception that we are all corrupt. we need
Is it real?
If it is pervasive,
Yeah.
then it has some basis in reality.
Okay.
If it is pervasive, it has some basis in reality. I'm not saying that everything that is perception is true,
Okay.
but if it is pervasive, the way it is pervasive, there's some basis in reality. And I think that instead of all of us pretending, let's sit up and fight it from the grassroots to the level of the president, from the legislature to the executive, in the judiciary, in the private sector, everywhere.
This government's approach, do you think it will work?
It's not just about what governments do. It's about what the people do.
But I do not have control over the state's powers. I cannot, for example, effect what they call arrest of any politician.
You have control over your camera.
Yes.
You have control over your microphone.
And that,
you have control over your microphone.
At best, I will do an expose, but beyond the expose, rarely nothing happens.
Sunlight is the best disinfectant.
Yes, but
when it comes to corruption,
we've done so, but it looks like people are immune and so much to the sunlight that they really don't care how far it goes. In fact, they believe that the media just talks about the thing and it ends there.
No. You play your role. You play a role. There are civil society organizations like the Integrity Initiatives and all those organizations that also follow up and do some further detailed work. Like you said, there are institutions like Parliament, the Public Accounts Committee that are supposed to follow up and then make sure that they do a diligent work. There's a judiciary that is supposed to really, prosecute. I mean, that is to preside and then take decisions and send clear signals to the public about what the position is. These are all different roles that everybody is supposed to play. Don't leave it just to a president. Don't leave it just to a president. And don't leave it just to a minister.
But a government sets the agenda. I'm asking you directly, the agenda of this government to fight corruption, do you think is the one that will deliver the kind of goals we want?
Well, in the first place, it's just 8 months. There are a number of incidents, and then also government has come out with some policies. One, they talk about the appointment of the office of special prosecutor. Let me tell you something. First and foremost, the minority has been raising technical issues.
Yeah.
And when we raise a technical issue, the impression is that we are afraid of the institution being set up.
To witch hunt?
Not about even witch hunting. For me, the key thing is that there is nothing that the special prosecutor can do that the Attorney General cannot do. Nothing, absolutely nothing.
The political will to prosecute.
So the question is, who is going to appoint the special prosecutor ultimately?
Ultimately is the executive president.
Precisely. The same person who nominates the Attorney General for appointment. And the Attorney General has even greater constitutional protection than a special prosecutor. Attorney General has greater constitutional protection than the special prosecutor. Attorney General's appointment is done jointly by the Parliament and the President. And yet, we cannot have confidence in an Attorney General.
I'd like to see anybody in the minority who is in favor of these special prosecutors. I mean...
No, but that's the point. The point we're making is this. There's a technical legal issue.
Yeah.
So, look at it from that perspective. And
I don't think that they can ever work on this technical legal issue.
Look, nothing stops the Attorney General sitting in her office tomorrow morning to go and pick up all those people's files that they say they want to prosecute and start a prosecution. At the end of the day, in law, it is the quality of the work that you are doing. Whether it's a special prosecutor or it's the Attorney General, people are going to be following the proceedings to see whether justice is being done, whether there's fairness. It doesn't matter who it is.
There's another policy too of this government,
doesn't matter who
and
it
the
is.
President has stated that categorically. Examples we have seen. For example, he says that when you make the allegation, we would investigate it. You should be willing and ready to back it with evidence. He says, for example, that his deputy chief of staffs have actually been alleged to have been engaged in some form of corruption, and the communications minister immediately has ordered the CID to go into that. They have already gotten to these people and taken some evidence. Is that a step in the right direction?
Well, I think so. I think that if there's an allegation of corruption against any public officer in your government, the thing to do is to allow the institutions to investigate. Unfortunately, the level of confidence that people have in those institutions, they have to step up their game to build confidence.
Okay.
If the CID is invited, will the CID do a clean, impartial, thorough job? A kind of job that will instill public confidence in them. So that is where work really has to be done. The president inviting them, people will say, oh, but this one, he's just going to whitewash this thing and then there won't be any thorough investigation. They'll come up with a report. I mean, that is how people feel, at least most people that I have spoken to, that's how they feel about the bust issue, for instance. They feel that the bust issue, there was no thorough investigation, and a
committee was asked to stop work for another committee to take over.
Precisely, that it was just an attempt to engage in a cover-up, and there was no commitment to dealing with the real issues and the complaints that were made. So at the end of the day, it's not just about, oh, I have referred the matter to an institution to investigate. But those institutions are asserting their independence, impartiality, and going about their job with the level of professionalism that is needed to instill public confidence in them, or restore public confidence in them, so that in future, anytime that they say this matter has been referred to the CID, then the rest of the public will say, yeah, they're going to do a good job. But if the CID officer in the district, in a case involving the stealing of a goat, is seen to be taking small monies and rendering the case useless in prosecutions.
How much more?
If that is the experience of the ordinary person in relation to the CID, and they hear that the president has also invited the CID to come and investigate a minister, what do you think will naturally
believe will be much ado about nothing?
Precisely. And that is where my argument about activities at the lower level and how it instills discipline and confidence in the ordinary person is very important. And that is why, you know, sometimes it is difficult to even galvanize the public to fight corruption. When you start talking about corruption, immediately we turn into a partisan thing. Any NDC member will want to defend an NDC member who is alleged to be involved in corruption. Vice versa, any MPP member will want to defend an MPP minister who is alleged to be involved in a corrupt act. And so, you know, it just, right from the very beginning, destroys the confidence that people have when they want to go out and fight corruption.
I get your point, but we'll be back after this break to continue upfront. My guest is the current chairman of the Parliament Subsidiary Legislation Committee, and we are in Job 600 where his office is, and we are engaging him on this and many other issues. When we are back, we will tap into his knowledge as a former environment minister on the biggest fight in this country against illegal mining. You're welcome back. This is Upfront. My guest is Parliament Subsidiary Legislation Committee Chairman, the Honorable Mahama Ayariga, and we've been talking about his work in Parliament, dealing with corruption. But now, let's change the gear. Let's talk about his former job as an environment minister, because Ghana is in a big fight against galamsey. We put together a task force to deal with that particular menace in a way that we believe may be sustainable, as we've heard, unless we get to the bottom of the matter. This task force is not leaving the mines and the pits. Already, the task force has encountered some difficulties, and they've told us that they're changing their plan. The modus operandi is changing. Some people have died in the course of the task force operations, and they have burned, contrary to law, some of the things they are supposed to actually seize and take through the legal process. I've heard say that you are opposed to the idea of militarizing the fight and letting the soldiers descend into the pits and clearing these illegal miners. That point has been made. But when they tell you that we are changing the strategy, are you now for a renewed strategy to engage by these military men?
First and foremost, I am for any effort to keep the environment clean. And
you certainly don't favor military men on the grounds.
No, I'm for any effort to keep the environment clean. If those implementing the strategy think ultimately that they need to engage law enforcement and etc., Why not? They are also one of the law enforcing agencies of our country. What I have said is that it will not yield the desired results.
Okay.
That is what I have said. I have said that it will not yield the desired results.
They're very emboldened, even when they tell you that they're going to be there for a very long time.
I'm saying that it will not yield the desired results.
The 2013 might not have yielded the results, but this is a renewed fight.
Let me give you my reasons why I tell you that it will not yield the desired results. First and foremost, you may not have the size of military to mount the level of surveillance needed to stop it. So you have to employ technology.
Do you know this for a fact?
You have to engage technology.
Okay, well, of course, we use drones, and that's been stated a long time.
Are they using it?
They say they'll use, as in they will in the nearest future.
Precisely.
Yes.
Not just that, also satellite imagery.
Okay.
You need to engage that technology in order to be able to monitor everywhere in the country where there's any digging that is taking place on a large scale that looks like a mining activity, so that your use of your security agency can be more targeted instead of just sending them all over the place.
But they are being sent to 3 regions anyway.
Precisely. But the mining is not only in 3 regions.
Yeah.
Mining is taking place in all 10 regions of this country.
No, the government's own report says it's in 8 out of the 10. Greater Accra and Volta accepted.
Greater Accra?
Yes.
There's sun winning.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the mining for gold.
A new place in Greater Accra.
I get your point.
And in some cases, it could cause more damage than even digging a pit in some village to try and extract gold. So, everywhere. So, you need to do that. The second thing is, and right from the beginning, if you noticed, I have been talking about getting institutions to work. Getting institutions to work and to work well. Gold as a resource, mineral resource, is desirable. We need it. It finances the economy of this country, and it finances the global economy. So digging for gold is not a bad thing. It is when you are digging for gold in a way that is environmentally destructive and you don't have the permits. So my argument has been that all these young people that we have criminalized, let's rather work towards normalizing the industry for them by ensuring that the small-scale mining law is functional.
Okay.
And for that to be functional, you need a whole institutional infrastructure on the ground to make sure that areas where gold exists, that there are offices there that provide the necessary licensing for young people or even whoever to be able to engage in lawful mining, and that you have enough officers of the Environmental Protection Agency there with the capacity based on adequate resources to be able to monitor what they are doing, and with the Mineral Commission having enough technical persons to go around and make sure that they are mining according to proper mining engineering standards. These are the things that you must do institutionally for it to work. And
but that's, I'm told it's happening. We are told that there are new mining officers who are being recruited, and they are going to be more than the usually previously 9 district officers we had. And there's what's called a multilateral mining improvement plan, which is supposed to in any way help sustain mining, which is environmentally friendly and all of that. It is being done.
So that is the argument that I have been making. Not that I'm against the soldiers.
Okay.
But I'm saying that from what I know of small-scale mining, which we call galamsey, from what I know of it, the soldiers will not be able to effectively stop it.
Even when they change their plan?
It is not the soldiers changing the plan. It is the government changing the plan. If they change the plan to emphasize more on formalizing them and providing them with technical support to be able to do it properly, and making sure that there are regulations that ensure that you reclaim the land after you have carried out the mining activity, then it is not the soldiers. Okay. It is the fact that you have adopted a more humane approach that focuses on institution building, that focuses on building the capacity of individuals, that focuses on formalizing what was hitherto considered an illegal criminal activity, but which really fuels the economy. Okay. I'm saying that it is that will help you in the fight. When I was environment minister, I was taken to some mines, and they took me to an open pit mining, huge excavation. They took me to the middle of a forest and showed me a forest and asked me I should comment. I said, what do you want? This is a forest. They said, well, this was an open pit, the way that the other one that you went to was. But after several years of, reclamation, planting and taking care of it with the experts, it's become a thick forest. So the point that they want to make is that what you see there, the open excavation, when we finish, will become a forest in 10 years' time. That's the way that this forest looks. So the argument is...
that's more like a sustained mining center, not necessarily one of the illegal mining sites.
No, but you see, it is all about financing. So for instance, when you go to obtain a mining permit, the EPA gives you an EPA permit also. Yeah. And in the EPA permit, you are made to post a reclamation bond.
Okay.
So they will assess how much it will take to reclaim this area when you finish. If you take $30 million, then they'll ask you to post a bond of $30 million with EcoBank or any other bank. And if you finish, you can use the money to reclaim. If you don't use the money to reclaim, the EPA will use the money to reclaim that area. So that is the agreement.
So we can't really complain about people abandoning mining pits?
No, there's a reclamation bond.
Okay.
That has been posted.
So what happens to that money?
So if they don't, the EPA goes for that money and then EPA uses it for reclamation. That is for the big mines.
Okay, okay.
Not the illegal activities that are taking place. So for the small scale miners, I visited some districts where mining was taking place. And I sat with the young people and we had a discussion. And we're exploring the option of they posting a bond with the district assemblies so that when they finish mining and they don't reclaim, the assemblies will reclaim. At that time, some of the young people say, oh, Honorable, assembly no, Mujisika. The assemblies are taking money from
the
them.
Illegal operators.
Oh, that's why they don't understand why you are classifying them as illegal.
Oh, okay.
Because as far as they are concerned, your assembly
legitimacy is given to their activities.
Yes. Some legitimacy is given to their activities. You see, and for many of those who are using excavators and bulldozers and heavy earth moving equipments, I mean, you and I sitting here, given our, lawful incomes, how many bulldozers can we rent?
Yes.
And keep them working in a given location for how long? Because on an average, every day you pay not less than $1,000.
Yes, I'm given to understand that external cubic says that they are losing close to 60,000 daily for having their machines sit at one place for the period that they were confiscated.
I'm just talking about just an ordinary bulldozer, an excavator. So the people who can rent or lease an excavator and keep it for months in the forest excavating for ore in order to process for gold are not small people.
Okay.
There are people who are capable of investing. I have engaged some of those people. And they tell me, look, Minister, we can do good mining. But do you know the problem? They can never even get a mining permit for that area because at the Minerals Commission, and I have raised this issue several times, and I'm not afraid to raise it again. At the Minerals Commission, they have all the information about where there are mineral deposits across the country. Okay. So what has happened is that any time that these young people also discover that there's gold somewhere or deposit somewhere that they can mine, when they go and apply for a small-scale mining permit or even a medium one, they are told that the place is encumbered. Somebody has already done the work and obtained some permits in relation to the place and encumbered the place lawfully, but it's not mining, waiting for an investor to come so that he will sell the whole package to the investor, and then that is his
But is that
reward.
legal?
Clearly, they can go through the process legally, but at the point when they have obtained the concession and they are not mining but waiting for some investor to come for them to sell it, that then becomes an illegal behavior. Okay. And so that is where it is. And in situations like that, you expect the Minerals Commission to terminate the lease and then leave the place open so that when young people come and then smaller, people come with medium scale, activity and want smaller concessions of 25 acres, 30 acres, then they can concession those ones out to them. And then they said when they have the lawful permit, they can do the right investments. But as it is now, where they are hiding and doing it, and at any time some soldier men can come and stop them and destroy their equipment, they are in a hurry to excavate as much ore as they can so that they can process, and whatever they can extract out of it, they get it and then they run away. But if they had a lawful permit, this same person will be able to engage, a mining engineer who will make sure that the mining is done properly, and then they will be able to, post a reclamation bond, and the EPA can follow up and make sure that the reclamation is done.
It looks like a very wonderful plan. Is the plan available to the kind people operating in the spaces of mining, in this case, ministries and also the people in charge?
Well, I mean, if you call the former chief executive of the Minerals Commission, Dr. Obin,
yeah,
if you call, he'll tell you. I approached
but
them.
Really, he was not doing that.
I approached them on this issue. I tried very hard to convene meetings, and I said, look, let's adopt this approach. If we adopt this approach, the EPA, the Ministry of Environment, where I was, doesn't control security apparatus to go around everywhere, chasing people and stopping people. And the way gold is, even when you go around chasing people, they are willing to risk their lives unless you just station soldiers permanently at a location to prevent them. And let me assure you, I have been to places where soldiers have been permanently stationed, and I have received reports. I can't vouch for their authenticity, but I've received reports from the young people that are, oh, Minister, it is because you are standing here that the soldiers are pretending to be active. When you go, oh, they will allow us to do it.
That's interesting.
Because the soldiers are their brothers.
I see.
And they know the level of poverty and unemployment in the system. And they feel for these young people. So they allow them sometimes to scoop, a few buckets and go and process. And whatever they get, they look the other way. I'm not even imputing any corrupt motives. Okay. But just out of sympathy. So even when you station soldiers there, go and come back and you see that there has been some more digging.
I mean, it sounds to me that we've gotten a 10 over his head.
Yes, and let me assure you, I heard that the soldiers killed some young people. Yeah. And somebody will say, oh, when they do that, the guys will be scared and then they will stop. So look, go to the Galamsey sites. Every day the pits are collapsing and killing many young people. Do you know what they do? They simply remove that person and they continue digging.
Yes, some even believe that they get more gold when people die there.
Precisely. So that has ceased to be a deterrent for these young people because of the influences. Spiritual influences, sometimes really just hard drugs. Okay. So you require a more nuanced, a more complex, intricate approach that mixes your hard military, tactics with actually building the institutions that will formalize aid, support, and make it a viable economic activity that will reward them under very safe conditions. And then, all of us will have them not polluting the water bodies the way that they are doing. There are some areas where, for me, it is a no-go area. For instance, mining in the river. Okay. It is such a technical job that I don't see who has the capacity in this country to mine in a river.
I get your point. And
so for me, let me just conclude on that note that when it comes to the issue of mining close to in water bodies, I support whatever effort, be it military, be it what, to stop that activity. It is non-negotiable because of the danger involved. And I've been to Western region as the environment minister. I've been to, Ashanti region and some other regions where many of the water bodies have turned brown, are polluted, not drinkable. Communities can no longer have safe water to drink, and we need to sit up. But I'm talking about water bodies, mining near water bodies or inside water bodies, and those ones we need to deal ruthlessly with them.
Honorable, I'll take my final break and conclude when we come after this particular break. You're welcome back. It's getting interesting here in the studios on how best to deal with this particular big-time canker, the illegal mining scourge in the country. And the Honorable former minister in charge of the environment has been telling us much in this particular direction. There is this talk that we always prioritize it for a period of time, and for some time we lose focus on that. And it seems like that's happening now. People are shifting focus to other issues. So the illegal mining issues might not be on the top radar. Do you fear that the things you have done in times past, which have not really successfully dealt with the matter, will just be repeated this time around?
But that's the point that I've been making. The point I've been making is that it won't go anywhere unless you focus on the difficult task of building systems on the ground, building institutions on the ground, building competencies on the ground, and resourcing those systems. Doing a cost-benefit analysis, it's an economic activity.
Yeah.
I mean, the benefit must be worth our investments.
Okay.
Whether we are investing by way of sending security people to go and spend the whole, month or year there, or we are investing in recruiting more personnel for the Minerals Commission and establishing more district mining offices and expanding the capacity and the outreach or the reach of the Environmental Protection Agency. All that is a cost-benefit analysis. And for the environment, there can never be too high a cost.
Okay.
So for me, the investment in institution building, developing the right systems and competencies, formalizing the system is a more sustainable approach so that the discipline that we see at the level of large-scale mining can be brought down to small-scale mining. Okay. As it is now, the institutions are more focused on developing discipline and systems that seem to work at the level of large-scale mining, and they really don't have that capacity or personnel to reach out to small-scale mining activity. Okay. That's where the work needs to be done.
I get your point. Now, of course, the environment issues are beyond that of what they call it, illegal mining. There is also the other issue to do with, we have areas that are prone to flooding. We also have big-time problems sometimes with the drains and structures in the country. This is sanitation we are talking about anyway. The current issues to do with sanitation, I remember, was it during your tenure, we tried banning a certain grade of rubber. What happened to that particular quest?
Well, I mean, yesterday I was reading on social media how Kenya had banned and imposed a hefty fine, I think $30-something thousand penalty for people who are using plastics and etc. We did, and we tried to get the manufacturers to move on to biodegradable plastics.
Did they work?
Some of them started, and the EPA was monitoring to try and push them to do it, and they were transiting into that sector. All our neighbors use biodegradable plastics. Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, all those countries. And our plastic manufacturing plants here produce biodegradable plastics and export to them. And yet here, they were not producing biodegradable plastics for us. And so getting them to produce for us wasn't that much of a problem.
Okay.
It was just a question of, they were also complaining about the importers. Because they are local manufacturers, but we needed to make sure that the importers were also importing biodegradable plastics. So I left the ministry with that policy and program, and the EPA with that policy and program, and it was for them to continue until we achieved 100% transition into that arrangement. But I don't think that it is really being followed through, probably due to the transition, and sometimes by the time a minister begins to settle in and then focus on an issue, it takes time. So for me, that is the issue. But the sanitation, the bigger sanitation issue also reflects a problem of poor spatial planning in our country. Yeah. And at the time of leaving office, we had just passed the Land Use and Spatial Planning Act, just towards the tail end of leaving office, because we need to ensure institutional coordination and working together so that there can be proper spatial planning. Because if you don't have proper spatial planning, you will have a hard time dealing effectively with your sanitation issues in an efficient manner. And that is where the issue of flooding and etc. comes in. There are natural disasters like we are seeing in Houston and Texas now. Those are things that happen once in 100 years. But the character of every time that there is a rain, there being flood in certain communities is a function of people haven't not planned settlement patterns, where to settle, where not to settle, and disrupting the pathways of drains and etc. And in the process, there's absolute chaos. And, nature will always have to find its way. And in the process, we all suffer. So I think that if we implement the land use and spatial planning legislation rigorously, going forward, we may be able to get a handle on the issue of sanitation management efficiently. Because whatever the case, you will always have to deal with the problem of sanitation. But it's a question of doing it efficiently, cost effectively.
Okay, so but that's an interesting point. And even in the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana, do you think that these issues are prioritized, sanitation and the environment?
Well, Parliament doesn't really deal with the issues of sanitation and environment.
I'm talking about, when it comes to legislation, when it comes to pushing for some of these issues to be dealt with.
No, MPs and generally are concerned.
Because, I hardly hear questions on what's happening with one environmental issue or the other. Beyond the big mining issues that happens in the country.
I think they do, but sanitation issues tend to be very localized issues.
Okay.
Very, very localized. They are dealt with at the level of the district assembly, and each district assembly has its own sort of small legislature.
Okay.
And so when the assemblymen meet and they debate, sometimes you go to the records of proceedings of assembly meetings and find out that 90% of the deliberations there are always about sanitation.
that's interesting. That's interesting to know.
Yeah, so at their level, and we're all members of our various assemblies. So at that level, there's quite a focus on sanitation
As somebody
issues.
who is from a region that benefited from the 82 creation of regions, are you for the creation of the 4 other regions?
I have always argued that there was a time when it was difficult to administer wide, expansive areas. But today, technology makes it very easy. In the past, if I were to have planned to go to Boku, to be in Boku by evening, I would have had to start at 4 a.m.
Yeah.
And then get to Boku by
the next morning.
8 p.m.
Yeah, evening.
As we sit, I'm actually on my way to the airport. You are the one holding me to catch a flight to Boku, and I expect to be in Boku by evening. So the transportation revolution, the IT revolution, the development of media, infrastructure, and etc. has really made the country small, if I may say so, for administrative purposes. So if you deploy technology effectively, you can handle the situation efficiently. And for me, the cost benefit is the issue. What is the cost of establishing new regions, new administrative setup, new offices? For a country that has already complained about a huge public sector, that needs to be downsized from what the senior minister has said. And you are involved with the IMF, and one of the key issues in the IMF arrangement is keeping some discipline in terms of public sector recruitments. Creating new regions, has cost implications, even though they will have political benefits. And so sometimes we look more at the political benefits than we are looking at the issues of cost. But be that as it may, both parties, our party and the NPP, promised Ghanaians that we'll create new regions. And there's nothing wrong with creating new regions, just that it will cost us money. And so the taxpayers should be ready to pay more for the new regions. I think that in terms of sending development to the grassroots, districts have done better than creating regions. Because regions really, apart from regional headquarters and their infrastructure, regions don't go with that much in terms of resources.
That's interesting.
But creating districts means that you also, that small piece of land also now gets its own common fund. And with that common fund, they can build their new schools, they can build their new hospitals and their new clinics and fix their roads and then extend electricity to rural parts and drill their boreholes and actually bring development to the place. So if you ask me, between being given a new region, 1, and being given 20 new districts, I'll pick the districts. Because the districts come with more resources than the regions. The regions just come with a regional office, a regional minister, and regional directors. It doesn't really change the fortunes of people in the districts.
For someone who was in the education ministry some time ago, and this is my last question, in about 2 or 3 weeks from now, they'll implement the free SHS program. You are fully in support of it, I want to believe.
I am for anything that will encourage young people to stay in school.
Will this particular one do so?
Oh yeah, definitely. If it is free,
okay.
If it is free, it is more likely to prevent those who would have dropped out for financial reasons from dropping out.
Okay.
And so a lot more young people will stay in school. The issues that I have with it, and I've raised it, one, I think that the Minister for Education ought to bring a legislation to Parliament on this issue, because it may in a way amount to, you know, amending the Education Act, and so state it. The second issue that I have is the way that the government intends to implement it. And I've said this several times. I don't know why people are not listening to me. I have said that it is unconstitutional for government to take public money and decide that they will pay the fees of your ward who is in SS1 and not pay the fees of his ward who is in SS2 and his ward who is in SS3. When the pot where the money was taken from was the result of tax paid by the parents of all three of them.
But this is a scholarship, as you have explained. It's not necessarily for every child.
You know, the scholarship, there must be a rational reason for discriminating.
Okay.
Now, to say you are discriminating in favor of first years and second years and third years will not get scholarship, but you give it to only first years, is for me not a rational way of discriminating.
If they don't bring this legislation, what changes?
I have always said that, not because I'm a litigant, but you see, if you bring the legislation, then Parliament has that opportunity to address the discrimination that you are seeking to introduce. But as it is now, the minister on his own is seeking to discriminate and in favor of only first year students, leaving out second year and third year.
Is it perpetuating an illegality?
I believe there's some unconstitutionality going to take place. And my argument is this, that if the money is 10 Ghana cedis and there are 10 children, give every child 1 cedi.
I see.
But what they are seeking to do is there are 3 children in SS1, 3 children in SS2, 3 children in SS4. So they are deciding they want to give all the 10 Ghana cedis.
Progressive introduction. By the next 4 years, every single student in the school would have gotten to be, what they call it, a beneficiary of the free SHS program. By
which case, by the 4th year, the children in year 2 and year 3 have been discriminated against, and many of them may have dropped out because they couldn't afford the full fees. And in year 3, the children the 3rd year, the children in year 3 will have dropped out because government did not give them the kind of support. But the argument is this, that at this stage, if you decide that you are giving all the 10 Ghana cedis to the 3 children in year 1, and you leave out year 2, 3 children, year 3, 3 children, it's not fair because the pot of money belongs to the parents of all these children.
I get your point. And,
and
this is a point I'm sure when they are close to implementation.
That kind of discrimination should not be acceptable. Once they say progressive implementation, progressive non-discriminatory implementation is what we expect. So if you have 100 Ghana cedis, it's not offense to have only 100 Ghana cedis. We all know the economy. We know the resources that are available. Indeed, that is why the NDC said, no, we can still achieve the same objective through the day schools. Okay. Because the reason why the cost is high.
So you don't think that selecting day schools over boarding schools was not also discriminatory?
No. The argument is this. The argument we made is that the reason why the cost is high is the feeding and housing component.
I get you.
So to make it easy for us to implement a free system of secondary education that is affordable, let's have day schools. And when the day schools are sited in the communities, the children don't have to be housed by the government. The children come to school. So just make sure the quality of teaching and learning in the schools is good. The feeding and housing, their parents will take care of.
I get your point.
That was the policy behind the day schools.
I get your point.
And we would have been able to implement a system of free senior high education at an affordable rate.
I get your point.
And this discrimination wouldn't have happened.
I've run out of time. Forgive me. I'm sure we can continue this conversation about it. But I enjoyed my time with you. Thank you so much. And my guest today is the Bawku Central MP. He's also a former Environment Minister and the Chairman of Parliament's Subsidiary Legislation Committee. Many thanks to you for joining us on our front today.